some good times knocking upon your front door.
Everyone, welcome to the show. I'm just on PodMatch, which is where we find a lot of our guests because one of our guests is not here yet. So, Oscar, if you're watching, come on in. We'll see you soon. Let's see. While we're waiting, we also have a great other guest. Christopher Pellegrini is here, and we're going to be talking all about Japanese spirits. So that'll be really fun. One thing that's not fun that I found out this morning is that starting in June, Facebook is removing all live videos that are 30 days and older. So what's going on with my hair? And so that sucks for us here on the show. We get a lot of views on Facebook. The majority of our views come from Facebook, and it's not just while we're live. A lot of them come after the 30 days, and the people that are on the show love to share it, and they're going to go away, and that makes me very sad, among other things. So for all of my people who do live streams on Facebook, I have clients who do it because I help people with their podcasts. I have friends who do it. That's what's happening in June, the end of June. So we'll see what happens. It makes me very, very sad because you put out great content. And I know there are other places. The show is on LinkedIn, it's on Instagram, it's on all the places. But I know that people love to watch it and watch it after. So anyway, that's my update for you. But that's not happening until June. So maybe we can find another fun place to live stream that just as many people want to hang out with us. Speaking of a lot of people, let's see how many views and downloads we're at for 2025 so far. We started 2025 with 100,000 views and downloads. Let's see where we're at today. $244,545 views and downloads of this show since we have started last June. The goal, and we're only a couple days left. Can you help us get to 250,000? Can you help us, please? And you can do that by just sharing the show right now. If you were watching, just share it. Press the button. It takes 4 seconds, if that, and help us get to 250. All right, that's all I have to tell you because Christopher Pellegrini is here. And I'm also excited to say that starting tomorrow, his company will be sponsoring the show. So that's very exciting. And we thank Christopher very much for all of his support. So let's start today by diving into a fascinating world of flavor and culture with Christopher Pellegrini. Christopher is a leading expert in Japanese spirits, the author of the Shochu Handbook, I hope I'm saying that right, and the host of 2 podcasts all about Japanese drinks. But that's not all. He's a lifelong performer. So get ready to learn something new and be thoroughly entertained as I welcome and say hello to Christopher Pellegrini. Sir.
Good morning or good evening. I'm in Tokyo, Japan right now. So it's
well, yeah, yes. How long have you lived in Japan?
I've been here for 22 plus years.
What brought you there?
Followed a girl.
Uh-huh.
Nobody ever doubts me when I say that.
No.
Nobody
no,
needs
I mean
any.
you could that doesn't need any explanation, right?
Yeah, no references need to be cited for that one, but yeah.
Did you have where did you grow up?
I grew up in Bristol, Vermont.
Okay.
So between Middlebury and Burlington, for those who are familiar, up in the hills. Yeah, a lot of nature, not a lot of people.
A little bit of a culture shock then, moving.
Oh, you could say that. But by the time that I followed my now wife to Japan, it worked out, by the way. It wasn't something that just fell apart. I stayed, she left. We're still together. We live here together in Tokyo, in Western Tokyo. But before I moved here, I lived in Spain for a while, and then I moved to South Korea for a while. So by the time I got to Japan, I was kind of very accustomed to starting over and to jumping into something completely unknown. that was going to throw me for several loops. And I was totally fine with that. I sort of knew how to deal with it. I knew what I had control over and what I did not. And I was okay with the things that I didn't have control over.
That takes a lot of work usually in life to figure that out but I suppose when you just, like we were talking about before, just diving in, it kind of helps when you just are kind of open to see what happens.
When I first moved to Spain, I was quite a bit younger. I was in undergrad, and I remember for the first 4 months or so, even though I spoke a modicum of Spanish before moving there, I still was out of sorts all the time, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And finally, I talked to a Spanish friend who said, when they had worked abroad, they said the same thing happened to them. They had really behaved not abnormally for their own. They just felt out of gear all the time. And it took a while. But as soon as I started to understand, I'm being affected by not feeling like I'm 100% comfortable, and that's okay. And then it made it a lot easier for me to process these things. And I realized, the things that are actually really affecting me are not the things I can see. They're not the obvious cues that cause me to feel uncomfortable, to second guess. It's not like, the food's different, the language different, the way people dress and behave is different. That's all obvious. We can catch those with our senses. It's the cultural stuff that's deeper, the assumptions, the way people treat time and relate to authority, and the assumptions about people's vocations and how important that is or central that is to their identity. Those sorts of things really threw me for a loop. And that was helpful because when I moved to Korea, which was much, much different, and then later to Japan, I was like, I know what this is all about. There's just all these things I don't even know what I don't know. And that's fine. I have to roll with it.
I love that. What did you want to be when you were a kid, when you grew up?
At first I wanted to be a private detective.
Oh.
I actually did a job shadowing thing when I was in junior high school, and I realized, A, you had to be a police officer for a long time first, and that didn't sound very exciting to me. And B, it was really boring shadowing a PI, because we were just like sitting around in a car all day, and then the guy would try to take photos of people who were like, double timing their health, when they're taking time off for health reasons, but they're working a second job, workers' comp type of violations. It's like, that's not cool.
Fun.
No, I felt a little bit scuzzy in my 13-year-old self, 14-year-old self. And so later I started homebrewing illicitly, and it went under the radar for a couple of years. And then by the time my parents found out, I was really into making beer. And so I became an apprentice at the local brewery as a teenager while I was still in high school.
Oh my gosh.
And because of some crazy circumstances, ended up becoming the youngest commercial brewer in the United States. And I was still too young to drink what I was making. Now that turned me into an intense and insufferable underage beer snob, but it also lit a fire in me. I wanted to open my own brew pub at some point. So that was a dream for a long time, was to make my own beer, focus on hospitality, show people a great time. And I thought that was going to be what I did. But then I met a girl.
They ruin everything. So, that's interesting. So you loved alcohol before. I thought it would kind of I thought we were going to talk about it the other way, where you were into acting and then you got into that business. That's interesting.
I did want to be an actor for a long time. And I, started out on stage as a kid, and that's something that I did for a long time, all the way through my years in Japan. Lots of movie work, lots of TV work, lots of TV commercials, a few. Yeah, it's a thing that I hold near and dear. I love performing, but it's not something that I have time for at the moment because of the way that my career has twisted and turned. And but I hope to get back to it at some point. And occasionally things fall in my lap and I'll go out and do the gig, but I can't, I don't have time to test and retest and go to callbacks and then like map out 2.5 weeks of my time that I really don't have to devote to anything. Yeah. So it's just not really realistic at this point, but it is a love of mine.
What do you love about the way that your life kind of weaves back and forth like that?
I mean, I I guess one thing that has served me pretty well is, number one, I don't take myself too seriously. And I think my grandparents had a lot to do with that, and my parents as well, to be perfectly fair. And that's been very helpful. I can take punches to both sides of the face multiple times and not take it personally and learn from it and get back up. And I also am kind of borderline, kind of off the charts, brimming with curiosity just about everything. And when something catches my attention, it's real hard to shake me off the scent. You can try whatever you want, but just like when I started homebrewing as a kid, that came out of a high school US history class project. And I figured out that during Prohibition, people were making bathtub gin. I was like, wow, how do you do that? I'll put the brakes on everything and start researching that instead. And then that led to a home business as a teenager. I think the statute of limitations has lapsed on that by now.
So we can openly talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Not something my mom is intensely proud of, but hey, it's partially led me to where I am today. So I guess it's not all bad.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about alcohol and the what do I want to say? Like the use of it for socializing, for partying, and you have, to me, taken it up like such a, you've made a business out of it, and it's not a business of like, oh, I own a bar and I just want people to get drunk. Can you talk about kind of the love of alcohol and what that means to you?
This really is carrying on from my years as a young brewer in Middlebury, Vermont. And I got over here and I ran headlong into a couple of spirits traditions that most people still haven't really heard of. They're called Shochu, Shochu, and then a slightly older tradition called awamori, Awamori. They're Japan's indigenous spirits, and they're also Japan's best kept secrets, really. They outsell sake here in Japan, and they are everywhere you go in this country, but they're not really exported that much yet. And when I showed up in Japan, I already had this love of small batch handmade craft beer that people would line up to fill their growlers with. And I found this spirit that nobody really knew anything about, but it was everywhere. And it just so turned out that right around the same time that I first moved to Japan back in 2002, maybe early 2003 is when it flipped over. That's the time when shochu and awamori sales domestically here in Japan pipped sake sales. So people actually drink more of these spirits, than they do sake. And sake is way better known worldwide, obviously.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with these spirits because they were so diverse, much like the craft beer I had grown up loving. And they were made by really small family-run distilleries mostly. And when I traveled down south to visit these places, I just figured out, wow, you're really just making these drinks for your local community. And these are not young businesses. This is like 5th generation, 7th generation master brewer distiller running the show, family members all over the place. And you just are like, oh my Lord, this is a huge thing that nobody knows about. And it's kind of ensconced down in southern Japan on Kyushu Island and further south to Okinawa. And I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the people, the place, the process, and how these folks just didn't really, they only knew, it's really like the prototypical, almost stereotypical Japanese crafts person, the artisan worker who just hones their skill to such a degree over generations in this case that they know how to do this thing perfectly, and they can't imagine doing anything else with their lives. And I was enchanted. I was smitten. And I started traveling down there as much as I could. I had a reason to start working on my Japanese ability finally. And over time, I gained some trust. And then I just wanted to tell the world about these magical things, these magical places, and these incredible people. And that's sort of what set me on the path to where I am today.
Do you ever think, like, where would my life be? What would I be doing if I stayed in the States?
Another universe, yeah, another dimension. What would I be doing?
Yeah.
I bet I would have taken a crack at an acting career. I had a ton of friends who went to both coasts to try it out. I would have probably done the same. And fortunately, I was very lucky. My parents, both educators, were supportive of that. And I
Yeah.
think my dad actually wanted me to give it a shot. And I was shocked. I was really shocked. Okay, you're cool with me being, you know, dead poor for a number of years with no prospects and uh and I was like, I think that's probably something I would have tried, because I would have hated myself if I hadn't tried.
Mhm.
And then at some point, I'm sure I would have started working in hospitality again. Might have become, I might have gone back into bartending or something, or and then it might have led me slowly towards finding the money, some sort of investor to open my brew pub. I could also see that happening too.
Yeah.
But I just got diverted by something else that I was very, very interested in, and she is now married to me, and we've been together since, geez, early 2001.
Wow, what a story. What a story. What is tell everybody about your podcast. Speaking of stories.
So I'm a co-host on two podcasts, both about booze. One is called Japan Distilled, which is just A to Z about spirits made in Japan. So we're talking whiskey, gin, rum, eau de vie, and of course the indigenous spirits, shochu and awamori. And that's something that I do with my good friend and business partner, Stephen Lyman. And we've been doing that for a few years now. And it's a lot of fun, as you know, about podcasting. And then I also co-host another one called Sake on Air. And I'm the resident shochu and awamori nerd. Everybody else is a sake guru on there. And they're actually like the gods of the sake world, a lot of them, in terms of the evangelism side of things. So it's a pretty high-powered group. And I kind of come in, mostly I'm the resident clown, as you can probably get a sense. And I just I just sprinkle in a little bit of spirits information, although I'm not entirely sure that the majority of the audience is really truly interested in that. I think they're mostly sake fans. But yeah, two different podcasts that are published pretty regularly. So if you're interested in Japanese drinks, then check them out.
What's the podcasting world like in Japan?
It's pretty nascent still at this point.
Mhm.
There's not a ton. You hear Spotify ads in Japanese constantly imploring people to listen to more podcasts, which I don't know is something that I don't know if they do that on US podcasts or European podcasts, Spotify, I mean, to try, hey, you got this free time during your commute. Why don't you listen to a podcast? And one of the characters in the radio ad is like, what's a podcast? It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. They're
Wow.
a decade and a half behind, I think, on that front.
Interesting.
So it is very interesting. It's very, very baby over here at this point. Not that many contenders. And a lot of the early big hitters are actually they're radio shows that have just repackaged their content in a way that is evergreen and also much more accessible.
Uh-huh. Wow. You're also, if you're not speaking about it, you're also writing about it. Can you talk about your books?
I have a book called The Shochu Handbook, which was originally published 10 years ago this year. And it was way ahead of its time. But I am finally getting that validation that I didn't really realize that I needed. But now, 10 years later, the sales have sort of started to hockey stick because people are finally paying attention to Japanese shochu and awamori. And there's not a lot of information out there about it yet. I also try to write about shochu and awamori on my personal website, ChristopherPellegrini.com. I put out little posts answering the most common questions on the internet, like what is shochu? What's the difference between Japanese shochu and Korean soju, which is spelled differently but rhymes, and so on and so forth. I also contributed to an amazing book for the drinks lover or the traveler in your life. It's the Oxford Companion to Spirits and Cocktails. And I'm responsible for most of the Japanese content in there as one of the many contributors. It's a hell of an encyclopedia. It's a great reference. And it's so big, you probably need to sort of move it around the coffee table lest it leave a dent. It's really a girthy.
You don't want it to break the
tome.
glass. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want it to like sag or anything. But in that sense, it's also a good like self-defense weapon. You could put a dent in somebody's head with that.
It's good when it's multi-purpose.
Oh yeah. I think they build that into the price.
What do you love most about your life right now?
Well, I am very, very lucky because what started out as an intense hobby and passion, and I was a university professor for 20 years teaching writing over here and later marketing. I didn't make any money doing that, but I was very time rich, and that afforded me all sorts of long weekends being able to go south and help out and learn. And I turned into one of the early evangelists for shochu and awamori production and the people making it. And so I started doing, as a hobbyist, really doing lots of events in Tokyo, trying to reach the expat community here. But what ended up happening was I ended up getting all of these Japanese folks coming to my events because they wanted to hear about a non-Japanese person's take on these indigenous spirits. So I was having to do the talks bilingually, and it was like changing the whole thing. And it's like, all right, this is not really, I love it, but I'm not reaching my audience that I want. So I wrote the book, and that gave me kind of a green light to start traveling around the world at the Japanese government's behest to just try to brainwash as many folks as I possibly could at trade conventions and that sort of thing. But what ended up happening was things sort of came together in 2017, 2018. Me and a friend bought 2/3 of a export company in Fukuoka, Japan, to try and start getting a little more skin into the export game to try to move product overseas or make it more easily available to importers around the world. And then right at the beginning of the pandemic, the stars aligned, and I quit my 20-year position, my tenured position at this very, very good university, gave up my healthcare, everything, to start Honkaku Spirits in New York. March 6th, 2020. Amazing time.
Good. Wow.
And so just went all in. So I had my finger in the export side of it, and another finger in the import side of it, so I could control all of the levers, cut out some middle people, keep the price down. And I've been doing that ever since. What I like about my life, sorry to take so long getting to the answer to your question, I love that when I wake up, I'm doing exactly what I always dreamed I needed to do to get shochu and awamori to pop worldwide. My dream, and this is not hyperbole at all, my dream is for these spirits to become as common as gin, tequila, rum, whiskey in all the bars worldwide. And fortunately, the industry has the capacity to do that. In fact, in 2022, there was a little bit more shochu and awamori produced in Japan than tequila in Mexico.
Wow.
And nobody's heard of this stuff yet.
Yeah.
So there's immense opportunity for scale. It's Japan's best kept secret, as I said. It's the most diverse spirit on the planet. It's really an incredible thing that's hiding in plain sight. They're not trying to hide it, but they don't export it really. And I'm doing my best to help, but I'm also part of the problem. As you can see, I drink a lot of it. So,
well, we should have done that. I should have had a glass here, and that's what we should have done today.
We're going to do this again. I will send you a little tasting kit, and we'll do a live tasting. Then we can go through, we can announce the bottles beforehand, and then folks can go out and try and find them themselves, and they can play along while we'll do a Shochu 101. How about that?
That'd be fun. Yeah, absolutely.
I think it would be. I think it'd be great. It'd be pretty incredibly educational, I think.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I would happily do that at 10 a.m. Why not? I'll just make sure I have no other interviews that day. And where can people best follow you and support you?
Thank you very much. I am very, very available through Instagram at my full name, Christopher Pellegrini. I also use a up and coming new social network called Spoutable, Spoutible, which most people haven't heard of. It's kind of just, it's not really algorithm based. It's more of a community based type of social network. So it's a pretty happy place, and they've got crazy, abuse management controls, probably first in class for the industry. If you DM me on Instagram, if I'm on my phone and you send me a menu from your local bar or your local restaurant, it's like, they got a shochu section. Which one of these should I try? And if I'm on my phone, I will reply and I'll say, get the second one, drink it on the rocks. You'll love it. And happens all the time.
That's fun. It also sounds like you're usually ahead of the curve. So I'm going to check into that social media website because I want to be ahead of the curve too.
Yeah, come join us.
Yeah, I thank you for being here. I'm excited to drink with you soon. That'll be fun.
I would love that. Yeah, just let me know. Let me know when I need to get you the samples.
Sounds good. Christopher Pellegrini, everyone, thank you so much. Go listen to the podcast, go buy the books, go visit him online. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
You know what would be better than watching this commercial? Watching your commercial. Scan the QR code or visit makeyourdayricher.com/advertising to start promoting today.
Oh, we're back. Well, I guess maybe Spoutable is our, let's see, maybe you can live stream on Spoutable, and that might be where we go. Who knows? Come back tomorrow. Oscar, we did not get a hold of Oscar, so we'll hopefully reach out. We'll connect with him soon and reschedule him to be on the show later to talk all about estate planning. So come back tomorrow for Shelley Miles from the Singleton Foundation. They use entertainment to help people learn about financial literacy. It's a great program. And then consciousness researcher Dean Graves will also be here. Go make your day richer. Go make somebody else's day richer. You've made mine by watching the show, and I just love you for it. And I thank you every day for coming here and hanging out with us. Now's a good time to share the show. There you go. And help us get to 250,000 views by March 1st. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.